Hey, this is Marcus, a 42-year-old restaurant mogul who made his fortune building a chain of luxury steakhouses across the country. And this little boy, his name's Eli. He's just 9 years old, dirty, skinny, and starving. Nobody noticed him. Nobody cared. Until Marcus came out the back door of his restaurant and saw what everyone else ignored. What happened next made headlines all over the world. So sit back. This is one of those stories you'll never forget. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, cause these stories will move your heart and maybe change your day. Marcus King was the kind of man who turned everything he touched into gold. At just 42, he owned over 30 restaurants across the country, from fancy rooftop dining spots in New York to beachside bistros in Miami. His flagship place, King's Table, sat right in the middle of downtown Chicago, where the rich came to eat and the poor were told to keep moving. He wasn't always like that. But somewhere along the road to success, Marcus had built up some pretty thick armor. Life had hardened him. Growing up broke in a one-bedroom apartment with a single mom who worked 2 jobs, he swore he'd never go back to that life. He built his empire brick by brick, dollar by dollar. And now that he had it all, cars, condos, even a private jet, he didn't let anything get in the way. Except one kid. One night. One alley. It was a Thursday evening in October. The air had that early winter bite, and the streets were packed with folks heading home, grabbing food, or arguing over parking spaces. Inside King's Table, the lights were low, the jazz was soft, and the smell of seared steak floated through the air. Servers in black vests moved like clockwork. Everything ran tight, just how Marcus liked it. But outside, just a few steps from the glowing front door, the world was different. Back in the alley behind the restaurant, near the dumpsters and loading zone, a small figure sat hunched over. His clothes were torn and covered in dirt. His face was smudged with city grime, and his shoes, if you could call them that, were falling apart. He was maybe 9 years old. His name was Eli, but nobody knew that. To them, he was just that homeless kid. He had been showing up for a couple weeks now, always around the same time. He'd dig through the trash, hoping to find scraps the kitchen tossed out. A burnt piece of bread. Half a sandwich. Sometimes, if he got lucky, some pasta or cold fries. Most nights, the workers just ignored him. Some told him to scram. One cook once laughed and threw a banana peel at him. "Get out of here, kid. You stink." Eli didn't talk back. He just kept digging. Marcus didn't know about him. Not yet. He rarely came through the back. Too busy, too important. But that night, something was off. He was in a mood. The filet mignon had come out undercooked, a customer complained about the music volume, and his head chef was out sick. So Marcus stormed out the back door to get some air, and that's when he saw him. At first, he didn't say anything. Just stood there, watching the boy pick through a soggy trash bag. Eli was skinny. Not just thin, but bones showing through the shirt skinny. His eyes looked sunken, like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't see Marcus at first. But Marcus saw everything. He saw the way the boy sniffed a piece of old chicken before nibbling at it. He saw how fast he hid it behind his back when he realized someone was watching. And he saw something else, something he hadn't felt in years. A memory. He was 10 years old again. Sitting in the back of a rundown diner in the South Side, watching his mom cry into her hands because they couldn't afford dinner that night. Remembering the time he had to steal a muffin from a gas station just to eat that day. The shame. The hunger. The cold. Marcus cleared his throat. Eli jumped like a squirrel, nearly falling backward. He looked up at Marcus, eyes wide, scared out of his mind. "I wasn't gonna steal nothing," Eli stammered. "I swear. I was just hungry." Marcus looked at him for a moment. He didn't move, didn't speak. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a $100 bill. "Come around front," he said quietly. "Let's get you something fresh." Eli blinked. "Me?" "Yeah, you. Come on." The boy hesitated. He looked down at his dirty pants, his ripped hoodie. "They ain't gonna let me in there. Your place is, it's real nice." Marcus chuckled, just a little. "I own the place, kid. If I say you can eat, you can eat." Still, Eli didn't move. Something in him didn't trust it. People had offered him food before, only to laugh, or worse. But there was something different about this man. His suit was clean. His shoes probably cost more than Eli had ever seen. And yet, his eyes weren't cold. Marcus turned and started walking toward the front entrance. After a few steps, he glanced back. Eli was still standing there. You coming or not? Eli looked around, like he expected someone to jump out and say it was all a joke. But nobody did. So he followed. They walked in through the side door. Heads turned. The hostess looked stunned. A server whispered something under her breath. But nobody said a word out loud. Not when Marcus King was walking in with the kid. They sat in a booth near the kitchen. Marcus handed him a menu, then changed his mind and said, "Order whatever you want. Or better yet, let me have chef make you something special." Eli didn't say much at first. He was nervous. But when the food came, hot mac and cheese, buttered rolls, and a piece of grilled chicken, the boy devoured it like he hadn't eaten in days. Because, well, he hadn't. Marcus watched in silence. Something inside him shifted that night. He couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the look in the boy's eyes. Maybe it was his own past catching up to him. Or maybe it was just time. But one thing was clear. Marcus King wasn't gonna just walk away. Not this time. Not from Eli. And that, right there, is where everything started. The boy in the alley had no idea that his life, and Marcus's too, was about to change forever. The next few days after their first meeting, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Eli. It wasn't just about the boy's ragged clothes or his thin, hollow cheeks. It was the emptiness in his eyes. The way he looked like he had given up on everything. Or maybe he never even believed in hope to begin with. Marcus went about his usual routine. Business meetings, phone calls, finalizing restaurant openings. It was all business as usual. But every time he passed the alley behind King's table, the image of that kid picking through the trash seemed to haunt him. It wasn't a guilt trip. Marcus didn't feel sorry for Eli. What Marcus felt was something deeper. A strange kind of pull, like the boy had come into his life for a reason. And Marcus, he wasn't the kind of person who ignored things like that. Not anymore. 3 days later, Marcus stood outside the alley again, his hands stuffed into the pockets of his custom-tailored coat. His expensive watch gleamed under the midday sun, a stark contrast to the world Eli lived in. He didn't want to scare the kid, so he waited a moment before calling out. "Eli," Marcus said, his voice low but firm. The boy's head shot up, eyes wide. His body tensed, ready to run if needed. "No need to run, kid," Marcus said with a slight smile. "I just wanted to check on you." Eli was silent for a long time. His gaze dropped to the ground, unsure if he was allowed to speak. Marcus took a step closer, his shoes clicking against the pavement. "Look, I know things might seem rough right now," Marcus said, taking a seat on an old crate a few feet away. "But I've got a deal for you. I want to offer you more than just a meal next time. I want to offer you a chance to change your life." Eli stared at him, confusion in his eyes. Marcus continued, "I can help you get back on your feet. I can give you a place to stay, food, clothes, whatever you need. But here's the thing, you've got to want it. You've got to be ready to leave the streets behind and start fresh." Eli's lips quivered, and for a moment, Marcus thought he might cry. He wasn't sure why this hit him so hard, but it did. He wasn't used to seeing anyone so young carry so much hurt in their eyes. After a long silence, Eli finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost as if he was speaking to himself. "I'm not good enough for all that," he said, looking down at his hands. Marcus's heart sank. This was what he had feared. The boy had already given up on himself, and Marcus had to change that. "No, Eli. You are good enough," Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm. "You just need someone to believe in you. I'm giving you that chance." Eli looked up at him, uncertainty still in his eyes. He wasn't sure if he could trust Marcus, but something inside him stirred. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was desperation. Either way, he had nothing left to lose. "Why are you doing this?" Eli asked, almost with a hint of suspicion. Marcus leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "Because I was once where you are. I know what it's like to have nothing, to feel invisible, to think nobody cares. But trust me when I say that things can change. You can change." Eli's eyes widened. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. "Okay," Eli whispered, barely audible. Marcus smiled, relieved. "All right. Let's get you something to eat first. And then we'll talk about next steps." They walked to the front of the restaurant, where a few people stared in surprise as the well-dressed businessman and the dirty, skinny kid stood side by side. Marcus ignored the whispers and the stares. He wasn't here for their opinions. He was here for Eli. Once they were inside, Marcus led Eli to a quiet corner of the restaurant. The staff was nervous at first, unsure how to react to the young boy. But Marcus had a way of commanding attention, and when he gave a simple nod, they knew exactly what to do. The kitchen immediately began preparing a special meal, a plate of hearty pasta with fresh vegetables, a juicy steak, and mashed potatoes with gravy. Eli sat in the booth, eyes wide with awe as the meal was placed in front of him. He wasn't used to this. The food was too fancy, too much. His hands shook slightly as he reached for the fork, unsure of what to do. "It's all yours, kid," Marcus said, his voice soft but encouraging. For a moment, Eli hesitated. Then he dove in, savoring every bite like it was the best thing he had ever tasted. Marcus watched him eat, his heart swelling with a mix of emotions. Seeing someone so grateful for something as simple as food made him realize just how lucky he had been in life. As Eli finished his meal, Marcus spoke again. "So, Eli," Marcus began, "what's your story? Where are your parents?" The question seemed to catch Eli off guard. He looked down at the empty plate in front of him, his fingers fidgeting nervously. I don't have parents," Eli muttered. "I ran away from the foster home a couple months ago. They didn't care about me. Nobody cared." Marcus felt a pang in his chest. It wasn't the first time he had heard a story like this, but hearing it from someone so young hit harder than he had expected. "Where have you been staying?" Marcus asked gently. Eli looked out the window, his voice barely a whisper. "Wherever I can. Sometimes under bridges, sometimes in alleys. I just keep moving." Marcus took a deep breath, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what he had expected, but this was more than he had imagined. "Well, Eli," Marcus said slowly, "I'm offering you a place to stay. And not just that. I'll help you get back on your feet. I'll make sure you get an education, help you learn how to cook, maybe even work at one of my restaurants. But you have to promise me one thing, no more running." Eli looked up at Marcus, tears welling in his eyes. For the first time in a long time, someone cared. Someone believed in him. "I promise," Eli whispered, his voice shaking. Marcus smiled, a sense of relief washing over him. This was just the beginning. But it was a beginning that would change both of their lives forever. The following weeks felt like a blur for Eli. Marcus kept his promise. He didn't just offer food, shelter, and a warm bed. He gave Eli the structure and stability he had been missing for years. Marcus found him a small apartment just outside the city, and every day, Eli's life seemed to transform before his eyes. The boy had never imagined this kind of life. He had never thought that someone, let alone a stranger, would offer him more than a meal or a bed for the night. But Marcus did. And slowly, Eli started to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different for him. Every morning, Marcus would pick Eli up, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a look that carried more meaning than any words ever could. They would drive to Marcus's restaurant, where Eli began working under the watchful eye of one of Marcus's most trusted chefs, Antonio. Antonio was tough but fair, and he immediately took Eli under his wing. At first, Eli was intimidated. He had never cooked a day in his life. He was used to scrounging for scraps, eating whatever he could find. But now, he had to learn how to make meals, how to follow recipes, how to keep up with the pace of the kitchen. Antonio made it clear that there were no shortcuts. Eli would have to work hard if he wanted to make it. Eli's first few days were rough. He struggled to keep up with the orders, his hands trembling as he tried to slice vegetables or stir a pot. He made mistakes, spilled sauces, and overcooked dishes. But Marcus never showed disappointment. Instead, he encouraged him, saying, "You're doing great, Eli. We all start somewhere. Just keep pushing." By the end of the first week, Eli felt like he was making progress. He could prep vegetables without shaking, and the smell of freshly baked bread didn't make him feel so out of place. The more he learned, the more his confidence grew. He started to take pride in his work, and it showed. Marcus often caught him smiling as he plated dishes, watching Antonio's approval as Eli worked his way up. But it wasn't just the kitchen where Eli was changing. Marcus was also pushing him to start thinking about the future, a future that didn't involve running from his past. He enrolled Eli in an online school program, offering him the chance to finish his high school diploma. At first, Eli had hesitated, convinced that he wouldn't be able to catch up. He had missed so much school, and the idea of sitting in a classroom again felt overwhelming. But Marcus wasn't the kind of person to give up on someone. "You can do this, Eli," he said. "Education is the key to everything. It opens doors, and I'm not going to let you waste this opportunity." So Eli did his best. He studied late into the night, sometimes in the small apartment Marcus had found for him, other times in the quiet corners of the restaurant. Marcus would check in on him regularly, offering guidance when needed. It wasn't easy, but every time Eli completed an assignment, passed a test, or simply felt the joy of learning something new, he realized that maybe he was finally on the right track. Outside of work and school, Marcus took Eli to see new places, the city's parks, museums, even a few fancy restaurants where Marcus had business meetings. Everywhere they went, Marcus made sure Eli was exposed to a world beyond what he had known. They'd sit at those restaurants, Eli marveling at the ornate dishes and elegant decor, and Marcus would tell him stories about how he'd built his empire. "You see, Eli," Marcus explained one day over a lavish meal, "I didn't start out rich. I came from nothing, just like you. But I kept pushing. I believed that my story could be more than just survival. I believed that I could create something. And you can do the same. Your story doesn't end here." Eli listened intently. He had never been so inspired by anyone in his life. Marcus's words, his guidance, gave him a sense of purpose he had never known. There was a future waiting for him, a future that didn't involve begging for food or hiding in alleys. But Marcus didn't stop there. He connected Eli with a local organization that helped troubled youth find mentorship and job opportunities. Through this connection, Eli started meeting people who could help him further his dreams. A local businessman took him under his wing and offered advice on how to build a career. Eli's self-esteem soared with each new connection. Eli also began to make friends for the first time. He wasn't just the kid who had to fend for himself anymore. He was part of something bigger, and the people around him were beginning to see him for who he was, not just some dirty, homeless kid, but a young man with potential. One night, several months after Marcus had first found him, they sat down at the same restaurant where they had shared that first meal. This time, things were different. The space between them had shifted. It wasn't just a business transaction anymore. They were partners in a way, a team. "Eli," Marcus began, his voice calm but serious, "I've been thinking about your future, and I want to offer you something special. I'm going to give you a stake in one of my restaurants. You've earned it. You've worked hard, and I believe in you. I want you to have a chance to create something of your own, not just for you, but for the people who need to see your story." Eli's eyes widened, and he could hardly believe what he was hearing. A stake in the restaurant. Marcus, his mentor, his friend, was trusting him with something so big. "Are you sure about this?" Eli asked, his voice trembling with emotion. Marcus smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "I've never been more sure of anything. This is your time, Eli. Don't waste it." Tears welled up in Eli's eyes as he tried to find the right words. He wasn't used to being given opportunities. He had always taken what he could get, never believing he was worthy of more. But now, he had a chance to build something of his own. Over the next few months, Eli worked tirelessly to learn the ins and outs of the restaurant business. He wasn't just a cook anymore. He was part owner, part creator. He had a say in the menu, the staff, and the vision for the future. Marcus stayed by his side, offering guidance when needed, but Eli was finding his own rhythm. By the time the grand opening of Eli's first restaurant arrived, the young man who had once been lost in the streets was now a successful entrepreneur. The doors were open to a crowd of people, eager to taste the food that had been created with Eli's own hands. His name was on the door. His vision was on the menu. And his story was a beacon of hope for anyone who believed they had nothing left to give. The success of Eli's restaurant was more than just business. It was a testament to what a little belief, a little kindness, and a lot of hard work could do. And it all started with one man who saw a hungry, homeless kid outside his restaurant and decided to make a difference. Marcus watched Eli that night, standing proudly in front of his restaurant, his face glowing with the same hope he had once lacked. Eli was no longer the boy who had nothing. He was a man who had everything he needed to succeed, the strength to believe in himself, the support of a mentor, and a future he had rewritten from the ground up. And as the doors of Eli's restaurant swung open, it was clear, this wasn't just a business. This was the beginning of something extraordinary.